Luna Martinez had exactly $17.43 to her name, which was about $16 more than her self-esteem after another thrilling day of being ignored by New York subway commuters. She stood in the 42nd Street station, violin case open like a financial wound, watching people hurry past as if her music carried some kind of contagious failure. "Come on, people," she muttered, drawing her bow across the strings in a particularly dramatic flourish. "This is Vivaldi, not nails on a chalkboard. Show some culture." A businessman dropped a quarter without looking, probably mistaking her case for a trash can. Luna sighed and launched into her backup plan, a pop song everyone would recognize, because apparently classical music was too sophisticated for a species that invented reality television. That's when the sky exploded. Well, not literally exploded, but when a ship the size of a city block comes screaming through the atmosphere trailing fire and alien profanity, exploded seemed like an appropriate description. The thing crashed into Central Park with enough force to rattle windows in Queens, sending up a mushroom cloud of dirt, trees, and what Luna assumed were very expensive landscaping projects. The subway platform emptied faster than a movie theater during a fire drill. Luna found herself alone, staring at the emergency broadcasts flooding every screen in sight. "Unidentified craft," the news anchor was saying, trying to maintain that professional calm that screamed, "I'm definitely not having a panic attack on live television." Luna packed up her violin with practiced efficiency. If the world was ending, she wasn't going to miss it. Besides, her apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up with a broken elevator. If aliens were invading, she'd rather meet them at ground level than climb 4 flights of stairs just to get vaporized. She emerged from the subway to find Manhattan in full disaster movie mode. Cars abandoned in the streets, people screaming and running in directions that made no tactical sense, and sirens wailing from every direction. In the distance, something that looked like a crystalline mountain was rising from the crater in Central Park, unfolding itself into a shape that hurt to look at directly. "Well," Luna said, to no one in particular, "this is definitely not covered in my street performer insurance plan." The thing, whatever it was, stood about 30 feet tall and appeared to be made entirely of shifting, razor-sharp crystal formations. It moved with predatory grace, each step sending tremors through the ground and fresh waves of panic through the fleeing crowds. Military helicopters circled overhead like angry insects, their weapons fire bouncing off the creature's hide like raindrops. Luna watched a tank round explode harmlessly against the thing's flank and shook her head. Yep, humanity's really showing off our problem-solving skills here. When in doubt, shoot it with bigger guns. The creature, apparently bored with being target practice, let out a sound like 1,000 wind chimes having a nervous breakdown and started walking toward Times Square. Luna realized she was probably the only person in a 5-mile radius moving toward the alien death machine instead of away from it. "This is either the stupidest or most interesting thing I've ever done," she muttered, clutching her violin case. Knowing my luck, probably both. Luna followed the sounds of destruction and military incompetence until she found herself at the edge of Central Park, where what used to be the sheep meadow now looked like the surface of an angry moon. The crystalline creature, which she'd started thinking of as Sparkles the Apocalypse Bringer, was methodically destroying a hot dog cart, while its owner screamed something in 3 languages, none of which seemed to be slowing down the alien. "You know what?" Luna said, setting down her violin case. "I've had worse audiences." She pulled out her instrument, partly because she was too tired to keep running, and partly because if she was going to die horribly, she might as well do it doing what she loved, which was apparently playing violin for creatures that could turn her into component atoms. The first few notes of Bach's Air on the G-string drifted across the devastation, competing with sirens and explosions for attention. Luna had chosen it because it was beautiful, and because if these were her last moments, she refused to go out playing Wonderwall. The effect was immediate and completely impossible. Sparkles, the Apocalypse Bringer, stopped mid-destruction, a mangled hot dog cart suspended in its crystalline grip. Its head, which was less a head and more a collection of geometric nightmares, turned toward Luna with the deliberate motion of a searchlight finding its target. "Oh, great," Luna muttered, but kept playing. "I've got its attention. This is definitely going in my obituary under Death by Hubris." But instead of reducing her to her component particles, the creature began to sway. Actually sway like it was at some kind of cosmic jazz club. The sharp, angular crystals that made up its body shifted and flowed, creating patterns that were almost hypnotic, almost beautiful, if you ignored the fact that they were attached to 30 feet of alien death machine. Luna kept playing, partly from shock and partly because stopping seemed like a bad idea when you'd accidentally discovered that xenocide could be prevented with a decent musical education. The creature settled down onto what might have been its haunches, still swaying gently to the music. "Are you kidding me?" Luna said. Bo paused mid-stroke. "I can't get a decent tip from humans, but I can entrance an alien war machine? There's definitely a life lesson here, but I'm too traumatized to figure out what it is." That's when the second ship arrived. This one was smaller, more elegant, and landed with the kind of precision that suggested its pilot had actually passed their driving test. The hull was smooth and organic-looking, like someone had grown a spaceship instead of building one. A hatch opened with a soft hiss, and out stepped the most professionally annoyed-looking being Luna had ever seen. Commander Vexstar of the Zaltharian Rescue Fleet was having the worst day of his very long military career. First, their battle unit had malfunctioned during a routine patrol, crashing into this backwater planet like a drunken cadet. Now he was standing in a crater watching their unstoppable weapon of mass destruction sitting like a trained pet while some primitive local played what sounded like organized noise. "Battle Unit 77 Alpha," he said into his translator, which rendered his words into something resembling English. "Report status immediately." The Shard Ripper, as his species called them, turned its massive head toward him with what could only be described as guilty defiance. It made a sound like crystal bells mixed with apologetic rumble. "It's humming," Vexstar said, his voice carrying the tone of someone whose worldview was currently being demolished by a street musician. "Our ultimate weapon is humming." Luna lowered her violin and gave the alien commander what she hoped was a friendly wave. "Hi there, I'm Luna. I think I might have accidentally adopted your, battle unit? Is that what you called it? Because it seems pretty happy here, and I've always wanted a pet, even if it's technically a weapon of mass destruction." Vexstar stared at her, then at the Shard Ripper, then back at her. In his 3 centuries of military service, he'd never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved with superior firepower and tactical superiority. He was beginning to suspect that this small, sarcastic human might be his first. "This is not how first contact protocols are supposed to work," he muttered in his own language, then switched to the translator. "Human, you will step away from the battle unit immediately. It is extremely dangerous." "Really?" Luna looked at the creature, which was now producing what could only be described as a contented purr. "Because it seems pretty chill to me. What's its name?" "It doesn't have a name. It's a weapon." "Well, that's just sad. I'm calling it Harmony." And that was the moment Commander Vexstar realized he was going to need to call in the diplomats. What Luna had assumed was going to be a quick "thanks for not destroying the city" conversation turned into something resembling an intergalactic therapy session. Commander Vexstar had called in what he described as cultural specialists, which Luna was pretty sure was military speak for people who deal with problems we can't shoot. The specialists turned out to be a mixed group that looked like the universe's most diverse corporate board meeting. There was Dr. Kefren, a being that resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a concerned librarian. Ambassador Quilty, who looked like someone had given a penguin opposable thumbs and a really good tailor, and something called a resonance interpreter, that Luna was pretty sure was just a fancy computer with anxiety issues. "Let me get this straight," Luna said, sitting cross-legged next to Harmony, who was still humming contentedly. "You're telling me that this isn't actually a weapon, it's a person." "The term person is culturally subjective," Dr. Kefren replied, her translator giving her the voice of a particularly patient kindergarten teacher. "But yes, the Shard Rippers are a sentient species. They were recruited by the Zeltarians for military purposes." Recruited. Luna's voice could have cut glass. That's a really nice way of saying enslaved, isn't it? The uncomfortable silence that followed was so thick Luna could have used it as a blanket. Commander Vexstar looked like he was reconsidering his career choices, while the other aliens suddenly found the destroyed hot dog cart fascinating. "The control implants," Dr. Kefron continued carefully, "suppress their consciousness and emotional responses. They become living weapons, responding only to tactical commands." "And my music broke that?" Luna asked, unconsciously reaching out to pat Harmony's crystalline flank. The creature leaned into her touch like a cat seeking affection. "That should be impossible," the resonance interpreter announced, in a voice that sounded like it was personally offended by the laws of physics. "The neural suppressors are quantum encrypted. Nothing should be able to penetrate them." "Well, clearly something did," Luna said, "because unless I'm having the most elaborate hallucination in human history, your unstoppable war machine is currently asking for belly rubs." As if to prove her point, Harmony rolled onto its side with a sound like a chandelier having a good time. Luna obligingly scratched what might have been its belly, producing a harmonic purr that made the nearby trees sway in rhythm. The implications are staggering, Ambassador Quillnox said, his penguin-like features creased with worry. If this human's music can free one Shardripper, it could potentially free them all. And how many are there? Luna asked, though she was pretty sure she didn't want to know the answer. Approximately 10,000, Vexter said quietly, deployed across 7 star systems. Luna stopped scratching Harmony's belly. 10,000 enslaved sentient beings, used as weapons. For how long? 6 centuries, Dr. Kefren admitted. 600 years, Luna's voice was flat. 600 years of slavery, and the best the galactic community could do was… what, exactly? The Zeltharian Empire is a sovereign nation, Ambassador Quillnox said defensively. The Galactic Council cannot interfere in internal affairs. Internal affairs? Luna stood up, her violin case clutched in her hands like a weapon. You're calling genocide an internal affair. We prefer the term aggressive expansion, Commander Vextar muttered, then immediately looked like he regretted speaking. Luna turned to stare at him. Are you seriously trying to rebrand conquest as corporate growth strategy? Look, human, Vextar said, his translator making him sound tired. I didn't make the policies, I just follow orders. Right, following orders. That's never been used as an excuse for terrible things before. Luna's sarcasm was so thick it practically had its own gravitational field. And what exactly were you planning to do with Harmony here when you found it? Return it to service, Vextar said. The neural suppressors can be recalibrated. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Vextar said, then paused as every other alien in the group turned to stare at him. I mean, that would be diplomatically inadvisable. Yes, it would, Ambassador Quillnox said quickly. Because the Galactic Council has been monitoring the situation, and we have a proposition for you, Luna Martinez. Luna raised an eyebrow. You know my name? We know everything about you, Dr. Kefren said. Street performer, classically trained, no family, no permanent address, and apparently the only being in the known galaxy who can break Zeltharian neural conditioning with a violin. When you put it like that, it sounds like a really specific superpower, Luna said. Also, knowing everything about me is creepy, but I'll address that later. What's this proposition? Ambassador Quillnox stepped forward, his formal diplomatic demeanor slipping into place like armor. The Galactic Council would like to offer you a position as Special Cultural Ambassador. Your mission would be to negotiate with the Zeltharian Empire for the release of all enslaved Shardrippers. Luna blinked. You want me to be a diplomat? Yes. Me. A broke street musician who lives in a studio apartment with a broken air conditioner, and a roommate who steals my food. Yes. To negotiate with an alien empire that's been enslaving sentient beings for 6 centuries. Yes. Luna looked down at Harmony, who was still purring contentedly. And if I say no? Then 10,000 sentient beings remain enslaved, Dr. Kefren said simply. And if I say yes? Then you become the most important diplomat in galactic history, Ambassador Quillen replied. Luna considered this. Do I get hazard pay? You get to save an entire species from extinction, Dr. Kefren said. Right, but do I get hazard pay? The aliens exchanged glances. We'll discuss compensation later, Ambassador Quillnox said. Luna sighed and looked up at the sky where more ships were beginning to appear. I can't believe I'm saying this, but okay. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them, Ambassador Quillnox said. First, Harmony comes with me. Non-negotiable. Agreed. Second, I want full disclosure about everything. No more culturally subjective euphemisms. If you're asking me to fix a genocide, I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Agreed. Third, I want a better violin. If I'm going to save the galaxy with music, I'm not doing it with a pawn shop special. We'll see what we can do. Luna nodded. Then, I guess I'm officially the galaxy's most unlikely diplomat. God help us all. Harmony let out what sounded like an approving trill, and Luna couldn't help but smile. At least somebody's optimistic about this. What she didn't say was that she was pretty sure she was about to get everyone killed, including herself. But hey, at least it would be more interesting than playing violin for subway commuters who thought classical music was background noise. Sometimes the universe had a really twisted sense of humor. Luna's crash course in galactic diplomacy began immediately, which was unfortunate, because she'd been hoping for at least a shower and a decent meal before potentially starting an intergalactic war. Instead, she found herself aboard Ambassador Quilnock's ship, which looked like someone had decided that minimalist modern design needed more existential dread. "This is your diplomatic briefing packet," Dr. Kefren said, handing Luna what appeared to be a crystalline tablet that hurt to look at directly. "It contains everything you need to know about Zeltharian culture, military structure, and negotiation protocols." Luna held the tablet at arm's length. "Does it come with a tutorial? Because I'm pretty sure this thing is trying to download itself into my brain." "That's exactly what it's doing," Dr. Kefren said cheerfully. "Don't worry, the neural integration process is only mildly traumatic." Mildly traumatic, Luna set the tablet down, very carefully. "You know what, let's try the old-fashioned approach. Just tell me what I need to know." Ambassador Quilnox cleared his throat, which sounded like a penguin gargling gravel. "The Zeltharian Empire is ruled by warlord Krexthor, who has held power for approximately 2 centuries. He's known for his tactical brilliance, his complete lack of empathy, and his collection of exotic torture devices." "Exotic torture devices," Luna repeated. "That's definitely going on my resume under relevant experience, right next to can make drunk people cry with violin music." "The Zeltharians value strength above all else," Dr. Kefren continued. "They view compassion as weakness and negotiation as surrender. Traditional diplomatic protocols involve formal challenges, ritual combat, and ceremonial gift-giving." "Ritual combat?" Luna looked down at her violin case. "I'm guessing death by classical music isn't one of their traditional combat forms." "Actually," the resonance interpreter chimed in, "the Zeltharians have a deep cultural fear of what they call harmony disruption. It's considered a form of psychological warfare." Luna blinked. "Wait, are you telling me that my music is literally their nightmare?" "More or less," Ambassador Quilnock said. "Zeltharian society is built on discord and conflict. Harmonious sounds cause them physical and psychological distress. So I'm basically walking into their worst fear, carrying the thing they're most afraid of." Luna started laughing, a sound that had more edge than humor. "This is either the best plan in galactic history or the worst. I'm betting on worst." "There's more," Dr. Kefren said, looking uncomfortable. "The Galactic Council has been trying to find a peaceful solution to the Zeltharian problem for decades. Every diplomatic mission has ended in failure." "How many failures are we talking about?" Luna asked. 17, Ambassador Quilnock said quietly, "including 3 that ended with the ambassadors being turned into what the Zeltharians call decorative sculptures." "Living decorative sculptures," Dr. Kefren clarified. Luna stared at them. "You're sending me to negotiate with people who turn diplomats into lawn ornaments, and you thought this was information I should get after agreeing to help?" "We were concerned you might decline the offer," Ambassador Quilnox admitted. "You think?" Luna's voice climbed several octaves. "I'm a street performer, not a suicidal maniac. There's a difference, though I'll admit it's sometimes hard to tell." "But you have something no previous ambassador has had," Dr. Kefren said. "You have harmony." As if summoned by its name, Harmony's crystalline head appeared in the doorway of the ship's conference room. The creature had to fold itself into an impossible geometric pretzel to fit through the opening, but it managed to squeeze inside and settle next to Luna with a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The Shardrippers are revered by the Zeltharians," Ambassador Quilnox explained. "They're considered sacred warriors, blessed by their war gods. If you arrive with a free Shardripper, it will be impossible for them to ignore you." "Right," Luna said, absently scratching behind what might have been Harmony's ear. "So I'm going to walk into the most militaristic society in the galaxy, accompanied by their sacred war beast, carrying the weapon they fear most, to negotiate for the freedom of 10,000 enslaved beings. And you think this is a good plan because previous attempts only ended with ambassadors becoming garden decorations?" "When you put it like that, it does sound somewhat problematic," Dr. Kefren admitted. "Somewhat problematic." Luna looked around the room at the assembled aliens. "Do any of you have any actual diplomatic experience? Because I'm starting to think you pulled this plan out of a hat marked things that will definitely get everyone killed." "I have extensive experience in cross-cultural communication," Ambassador Quilnock said defensively. "With who?" "Well, mostly with species that don't practice ritual disembowelment as a form of greeting." Luna put her head in her hands. "This is insane. I'm insane. You're all insane. This entire situation is insane." "But you're still going to do it," Dr. Kefren said. It wasn't a question. Luna looked up at Harmony, who was watching her with what she'd learned to recognize as concern. The creature's crystalline features shifted into patterns that somehow conveyed empathy, hope, and a deep, ancient sadness. 10,000 of them, Luna said quietly. 10,000, Dr. Kifran confirmed. All enslaved, all forced to fight wars they don't want to fight. For 6 centuries. Luna stood up and walked to the ship's viewport, where she could see Earth shrinking in the distance. Somewhere down there, her studio apartment sat empty, her few possessions gathering dust. Her old life, small and safe and utterly insignificant. You know what the really crazy part is? She said without turning around. I'm actually starting to think this might work. Really? Ambassador Quillnock sounded surprised. No, not really. I think we're all going to die horribly, and I'm going to be responsible for starting the first war in galactic history that was caused by violin music. Luna turned back to face them. But I'm going to do it anyway, because apparently I've reached the point in my life where certain death by alien warlord seems like a step up from playing subway stations for spare change. There is one more thing, Dr. Kefferin said hesitantly. Of course there is. Luna sat back down. Hit me. What else could possibly make this situation worse? The Galactic Council has prepared a backup plan. If diplomatic negotiations fail, they're prepared to launch a full-scale military assault on the Zeltharian Empire. And this is bad because? Because it would result in the deaths of all 10,000 enslaved shardrippers, Ambassador Quillnock said quietly. The Zeltharians would rather destroy them than lose them. Muna felt something cold settle in her stomach. So if I fail, everyone dies anyway. Yes. And if I succeed? Then you'll have accomplished something no one in galactic history has ever managed. You'll have ended a 600-year-old system of slavery through the power of music. Luna picked up her violin case and hugged it to her chest. No pressure or anything. We have complete faith in you, Dr. Kefren said. Really? Because I don't even have complete faith in my ability to make rent, and you're asking me to save 10,000 lives. You tamed a shardripper with a violin? Ambassador Quillnock pointed out. That's literally impossible. Yeah, well, impossible seems to be my specialty lately. Luna looked at Harmony, who trilled softly and nuzzled her shoulder. At least I'll have good company on the way to certain doom. The ship to the Zeltharian homeworld departs in 6 hours, Dr. Kefren said. I suggest you get some rest. Rest, Luna laughed. Right. Because nothing helps you sleep like knowing you're about to attempt the most dangerous diplomatic mission in galactic history. But as she was escorted to her quarters, Luna found herself thinking about the sound Harmony had made when she'd first played for it. Not the purr of contentment, but the sound before that. The sound of a mind breaking free from centuries of captivity. Maybe, just maybe, that sound was worth dying for. Even if she was pretty sure she was about to prove that the universe had a really twisted sense of humor. The Zeltharian homeworld looked exactly like Luna had expected a planet run by warmongering aliens to look. All jagged metal spires, perpetual storms, and an atmosphere that seemed personally offended by the concept of sunlight. The diplomatic transport descended through clouds that looked like they were made of angry smoke, while Luna tried not to think about the fact that this might be the last planet she ever saw. Remember, Ambassador Quillnock said for the 15th time, traditional Zeltharian greeting protocol involves a formal challenge, ritualistic posturing, and absolutely no eye contact until they acknowledge my presence, Luna finished. I got it the first 14 times. And if Warlord Krexthor offers you the ceremonial blade? I politely decline and explain that my weapon is musical in nature. Luna patted her violin case. Though I'm still not convinced that I fight with folk songs is going to impress anyone. The transport landed with a thud that suggested either poor piloting or the Zeltharians' idea of a red carpet welcome. Through the viewport, Luna could see the reception committee. A dozen aliens that looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a nightmare, and given the result, military training. They're smaller than I expected, Luna said. Those are the honor guard, Dr. Kefren said. They're considered the physically weaker caste. Great, so the small ones could probably bench press a city bus. Luna stood up and slung her violin case over her shoulder. Harmony, you ready for this? The Shardripper, who had spent the journey learning to fold itself into increasingly impossible shapes to fit inside the ship, unfolded into its full 30-foot glory. Its crystalline form caught the planet's strange light, and threw it back in patterns that hurt to look at directly but were somehow beautiful. You know what? Luna said, watching the honor guard take an involuntary step back. Maybe this will work after all. The walk to the throne room was like a tour through a museum of creative violence. The walls were covered with what Luna assumed were either artistic interpretations of famous battles or actual preserved body parts from defeated enemies. She decided not to ask for clarification. Warlord Krexthor sat on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of crystallized screaming. He was roughly humanoid if humans were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, and had faces that suggested evolution had given up halfway through and gone with intimidating as a backup plan. "So," he said, his voice like gravel in a blender, "the Galactic Council sends me a tiny mammal with a noisemaker and thinks this constitutes diplomacy?" Luna had been expecting this. The whole flight here, she'd been preparing for dismissal, condescension, and quite possibly ritual disembowelment. What she hadn't been expecting was the way Krexthor's eyes locked onto Harmony and went very, very still. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "That's what everyone keeps telling me," Luna replied, "but apparently impossible is my specialty. Battle units do not travel unrestrained. They do not choose their movements. They do not—" He paused, watching Harmony settle beside Luna like an enormous, crystalline dog. "They do not display affection. Maybe that's because you've never tried asking them what they want," Luna said, "instead of, enslaving them." The throne room went dead silent. Around the edges of the space, Luna could see Zeltharian courtiers and military officers frozen in place, as if someone had just committed the ultimate social faux pas. "You dare to question the sacred bond between the Zeltharian Empire and our blessed warriors?" Krexthor's voice rose to a roar that echoed off the walls. "Sacred bond," Luna's voice was flat. "That's what you call 6 centuries of slavery. It is symbiosis. We provide purpose, direction, glorious combat. They provide strength, power, victory. Did you ask them if they wanted any of that? Mere weapons. Weapons do not want." "Really?" Luna reached up and scratched behind Harmony's ear. The creature leaned into her touch and produced a sound like distant thunder mixed with contentment. "Because this looks like wanton to me." Krexthor stood up from his throne, all 8 feet of armored menace. "You will demonstrate the proper respect for our sacred warriors, or you will join the decoration collection in the outer courtyard." "Actually," Luna said, opening her violin case, "I was thinking more along the lines of a concert." "A what?" "A concert. Musical performance. The thing you're all supposedly terrified of?" Luna pulled out her violin and tested the strings. "I figure if I'm going to die horribly, I might as well do it doing what I love. You think your primitive noise-making will—" Luna didn't wait for him to finish. She raised her violin and began to play. The piece was Bach's Chaconne in D minor, a solo violin work that most musicians considered one of the most challenging pieces ever written. Luna had chosen it because it was beautiful, because it was complex, and because if she was going to break a 600-year-old system of slavery, she was going to do it with the best music humanity had ever produced. The effect was immediate and devastating. Krexthor staggered backward, as if he'd been physically struck. Around the throne room, Zeltharian courtiers were clutching their heads, their natural armor plating vibrating in harmony with the music. But that wasn't the impressive part. The impressive part was the sound that began to answer Luna's violin from outside the throne room, a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to come from the very foundations of the palace. Then another, and another. "What is that?" Krexthor demanded, his voice strained. "The sound," Luna said, never pausing in her playing, "is the sound of your weapons remembering what they used to be." The doors to the throne room burst open. Through them came a shard ripper that was even larger than Harmony, its crystalline form blazing with inner light. Behind it came another, and another. Within minutes the throne room was filled with dozens of the creatures, all of them moving with the fluid grace of beings who were no longer constrained by mental shackles. "The battle units," one of the Zeltharian officers whispered. "They're not responding to commands." "They're responding to mine," Luna said, finally lowering her violin. "Or rather, they're responding to the part of themselves you've been suppressing for 6 centuries. Krexthor looked around the throne room at the assembled shard rippers. His sacred weapons, his ultimate tools of conquest, were all focused on the small human with the violin. And for the first time in 2 centuries of rule, he looked uncertain. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to let them go," Luna said simply. "All of them. Every shard ripper in your empire. Let them choose their own paths." "That's impossible. Without the battle units, the empire will fall." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Luna said. "Maybe an empire built on slavery deserves to fall." "You would destroy everything we've built?" "I wouldn't destroy anything. I'm just giving them back their voices. Luna raised her violin again. Want to hear what they have to say? The music that followed was unlike anything Luna had ever played before. It wasn't just her violin anymore. It was dozens of Shardripper voices joining in harmonies that made the very air shimmer. It was the sound of freedom, of minds breaking free from centuries of captivity, of a species remembering what it meant to choose. And in that music, Luna heard something else. Stories. The Shardrippers weren't just mindless weapons. They were artists, philosophers, dreamers who had been forced to forget their own names. They were parents separated from their children, lovers torn apart by war, individuals who had been reduced to tools in someone else's conquest. The music swelled, and with it came the sound of crystal implants overloading throughout the palace. In the distance, Luna could hear the harmonic resonance spreading across the planet, as every enslaved Shardripper simultaneously remembered who they were. "Stop," Kirkstor said. "Please, stop." Luna lowered her violin and the music faded to silence. Around the throne room, the Shardrippers stood waiting, their crystalline forms pulsing with soft light. "We are not weapons," Harmony said, its voice like wind through crystal caves. "We are the resonance. We are the children of harmony and light. And we choose to be free." Krexthor looked at his former weapons, at his crumbling empire, at the small human who had undone 6 centuries of conquest with a violin and a song. "What happens now?" "Now," Luna said, "you learn to build something that doesn't require enslaving other species to survive. Or you don't, and you fall apart. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." "And the resonance?" "The resonance will make their own choices. Some might stay to help rebuild. Some might leave to find their own homes. Some might become street musicians." Luna smiled. "The point is, it's up to them now." Krexthor nodded slowly. I need time to process this." "Take all the time you need," Luna said. "But understand that this is not a negotiation, this is a revolution, and revolutions don't wait for permission." As if to emphasize her point, the sound of crystal implants failing began to echo from across the planet. The Zeltharian Empire, built on the backs of enslaved Shardrippers, was experiencing its first taste of freedom in 6 centuries. And Luna Martinez, former street performer and current galactic revolutionary, couldn't help but smile. "You know what?" she said to Harmony. "I think I'm starting to like this diplomat thing." 6 months later, Luna Martinez stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Council's newest diplomatic vessel, watching a binary star system paint the cosmos in shades of gold and crimson. Harmony was coiled beside her, its crystalline form reflecting the starlight in patterns that would have been impossible to imagine back when her biggest concern was making rent. "Ambassador Martinez?" Dr. Keprin's voice came through the ship's comm system. "We're receiving another distress signal from the Andromeda Galaxy. Something about a species that communicates exclusively through interpretive dance and is having a territorial dispute with silicon-based life forms." Luna sighed and picked up her violin case, which now bore diplomatic seals from 17 different star systems. "Let me guess, nobody knows how to negotiate with beings who express their demands through the cosmic equivalent of ballet." "That's actually remarkably accurate," Dr. Kefrain replied. "Of course it is." Luna scratched behind Harmony's ear, producing the creature's signature contented purr. "You know, 6 months ago I couldn't get a decent tip from humans who speak the same language as me. Now I'm the galaxy's go-to person for impossible diplomatic situations involving species that shouldn't theoretically be able to communicate at all." The irony wasn't lost on her. Luna Martinez, former subway busker who used to play Wonderwall for drunk commuters, was now officially the Galactic Council's interspecies harmony ambassador. Her business cards, which were apparently made of crystallized starlight and cost more than her old apartment, read, "Specializing in musical diplomacy and impossible situations." She'd liberated 12 enslaved species in the past 6 months, prevented 4 interstellar wars, and accidentally started a galaxy-wide cultural renaissance by teaching the Andorian Empire that music didn't have to be weaponized to be effective. The Zeltharian Empire had collapsed, replaced by a confederation of former slave species who were still figuring out how to govern themselves without conquest as a primary economic model. "You know what the really crazy part is?" Luna said to Harmony as they headed toward the ship's diplomatic chambers. "I'm actually starting to enjoy this job. Sure, there's the constant threat of death by alien politics, but at least nobody's dropping quarters in my violin case and walking away." Harmony trilled in what Luna had learned was the resonance equivalent of laughter. "The universe has a sense of humor, Luna friend. It takes a failed street performer to teach the galaxy that harmony is more powerful than discord. Failed street performer, Luna repeated. I prefer undiscovered galactic treasure, thank you very much. As they entered the diplomatic chambers, Luna reflected on how much had changed. The scared woman who'd played Bach for a war machine in Central Park had become someone who could walk into a room full of hostile alien diplomats and convince them to resolve their differences through collaborative music making. She'd learned that the universe was vast, complicated, and absolutely full of beings who just wanted to be heard. The comm system crackled to life again. Ambassador, we're approaching the Andromeda situation. The dancing species has apparently challenged the Silicon beings to what they're calling a performance of ultimate significance. Luna opened her violin case and smiled. Well, Harmony, looks like we're about to find out if interpretive dance and violin music can prevent another interstellar war. I have confidence in your abilities, Harmony said, its crystalline form brightening with anticipation. Yeah, well, one of us should. Luna raised her violin and began to play a warm-up scale. Let's go save the galaxy again. Just another day at the office for the universe's most unlikely diplomat. And as their ship entered hyperspace toward their next impossible mission, Luna couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, the universe's twisted sense of humor had finally worked out in her favor.